We are live.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to name off names of people that have not checked in yet. Tell me if you didn't do it yet. Eli Bile, Bella Bokelman, Addison Bott. Did you check in?
Yeah.
And Maddie Brown. And Claire Buckby, Natalia Byrne. And let's see, Ben Dilly, I saw you here. Did you check your name in? Did you? Maybe it's not catching up. Colin Dugan, did you check your name in? Did you? Drew Freeborn?
What, I signed in?
Did you?
I think so.
So I wonder if it's not syncing.
I got it up.
Olivia Iden, Jeff Kubinski, Emily Kramer, and let's see, Phoebe, I saw Phoebe, right? Drew and Evan, they're coming. Maybe, or maybe not. Okay. Check your name out. Okay, great. Nice. Just want to make sure you guys give credit because I'm going to be sending out notes soon saying, if you weren't here, make sure you watch the video. It's Evan, right? Andy. Then we've got Zach here. And Bella Rizzo. Is it Bella Rizzo? No. I think I saw her. And Lauren Schmidt. Rachel Schneider. George, I saw George. Hannah, I saw Hannah. Maggie. Grace. Evan. Is Annabelle here? There you go. Okay, good. Thanks. So, remind me, say them out. Who knows number one? Just say them out. So I know the guys before me, right? 2.
Respect your elders.
Respect your elders. That's in the name of the Lord your God's name. 3. Okay. 4. Honor your father and mother. Who knows number 5?
Don't murder. You shall not murder.
Shall not murder. That's what we're talking about tonight.
It says you shall not
So do you remember what we talked about? Do you remember how we talked about all the commandments are about relationships, right? And there's 2 different directions we talked about these relationships, right? Our relationship with God and our relationship with each other, which gets us this really cool thing. Feel free to applaud if you want to. I would hate to stop you from applauding. And which gets us this diagram of the cross, right? Our relationship with each other and our relationship with God. So, if I can get it to go on, there we go. So number 5, you shall not murder. So, in your small groups, I want you to write down, and someone's going to come up and share them, write down some weapons that are used to kill.
I want to write. I've never done it.
Go. And here's the thing. I'm looking for the most unobvious, creative answer you can come up with that ties into this plan.
What track are
All right, send somebody up once you've got a few.
What check are you? Wait, what's happening?
Give me your most interesting answers.
A chainsaw and snake venom. Hands.
What did you say? Hands. I really said pants.
Sword and butter knife.
Bullying, nukes, and social media.
That's what I'm looking for. Bullying.
Nunchuck. I made up that one.
Nunchuck.
Gossip. It can kill your self-esteem.
What was it?
Gossip.
That's a good one.
It can kill your self-esteem. Words, sharp wooden stick, bullying, ninja stars, and baseball. A nail gun and a balloon.
Balloon.
Words and bullying and a fork.
All right. So I was kind of looking for. I was kind of looking for those things that aren't real obvious in terms of what kills you, right? Because we're going to talk about that onion in a little bit. Number 2. What are some words that are associated with war, that remind you of war, or that maybe go along with war? Go ahead. Write some down. All right, once you have a few, come on up. Send someone new. Why is that so surprising to you? We can give you a new job, like someone that keeps the order of the group.
Injury, blood. Say injury, blood, and
All right, we good? Now, listen up, give me your full attention. Words that are associated with war.
ISIS and power. Fear, destruction, and loss. Lies, fear, and rivalries.
Communism and death.
Violence and death.
Gun violence and Milwaukee public schools.
Artillery and nuclear weapons. Injury and sadness. People.
Those are great answers. Another one, the opposite. What are some words that are associated with peace? Write these down.
Sharing is caring. Say, you like to say sharing is caring.
I'll say putting on together. That was not
No, you have to say
All right, send somebody up.
I still can't believe my sister said that. She said, mine's from.
All right, words that are associated with peace. Please don't get up and get water anymore. That's the third time I've told you.
Love and forgiveness. Kindness, equality, and calm. Love and trust.
Kind community garden.
Happiness and forgiveness. Acceptance and friendship.
Hope and unity.
Jesus and hippies.
Like the mighty working God, I'm God and calm.
Nice. Good job. Very good. One last one. Those are great words. Last one. Now, this is to yourself. This is just to yourself. Close your eyes. And today, think of the cruelest, meanest thing that was said to you recently. It doesn't have to be today. And just think it to your head. You don't need to say it out to anybody else. I just want you to be reminded of it. And then if you can remember one thing, try to remember how you felt when it was said to you. All right. So tonight we're talking about the fifth commandment, you shall not murder. And we just went through this exercise of thinking about different words that remind us of, about killing, weapons, war. War is often associated with murder. You're trying to kill as many people on the other side as possible and trying to stop the other country from doing what they're trying to do to you, and you're trying to do it to them, and it just becomes this pretty horrific thing. I had an experience. I was in the Army, and when I went through basic training, one of the last things you do in basic training is, the way basic training works is 8 weeks of learning how to prepare for war. So you are learning your rifle, you learn how to shoot a rifle, you learn how to shoot it's called a law, anti-tank weaponry, so it shoots a missile at a tank to blow it up. All these big things which seem pretty cool when you're learning them. And so you're learning how to throw a grenade, so we threw grenades, things like that. So you're practicing all this, and one of the last ones was called a claymore mine. It's a mine that when you detonate it, it shoots thousands of BBs out in front of you. So the idea is it's ripping through everyone in front of it. So it's pretty terrible. So you're learning how to do this. You're learning how to kill. You're learning how to be ready to go to war, because whatever job you have in the Army, you're pretty much trained to go to war. So I was a trombone player. I'll let that sink in for a second. That was my job. I was a trombone player. I was in band. You can all laugh. That's funny. But that was my job. So I was in the band, but even as a trombone player, you learn to be ready to war. Because I guarantee when war breaks out, they're not going to say, get your trombone, right? They're going to say, get your M16. So one of the last things you do in your basic training, after you've learned all these weapons, is you do a practice round. So they take you, after you do all this stuff, they take you to a big stadium. And you're looking out in front of you at a whole bunch of trees, and they light off all this weaponry they have, missiles, and a lot of them have what they're called tracers on them. So bullets or weapons that have tracers on them, when they come out of the gun, they have paint on them, and that paint lights up. So it starts on fire, essentially. So you can see where it's going. So you can trace where you're shooting. So you see all these, and it was a lot like fireworks. And up in the stands, we were like, yeah! It was just like watching fireworks, really cool. So then they say, okay, let's go. And you're like, where are we going? We're going to go to the last range that you're going to practice on, which is you're going to practice in a war. So you're going to be in a war. So they put you on one side of a fence, and they say, now, you have to get from here to over there without getting killed.
And they actually shoot you with real guns.
And we're going to be shooting real guns.
Oh.
Now, they don't tell you they're going to be shooting over your head, but you are in the middle of this, and they're literally lighting off grenades around you, which are super loud, louder than any firework M16 not M16, what are those? Cherry bombs. Any of those really bad fireworks, really loud. They're designed to put a crater in the ground, okay? And they're shooting all sorts of guns over you. You hear it hitting things above you. So you're thinking, they're shooting at me. I have never been more afraid in my life. I had just come off this time where I was like, yeah, this is going to be great, woohoo! Until you're suddenly going, they're shooting at me, They're shooting at me. This is, and you're crawling on your belly, trying to get up this hill, and you're going under barbed wire, and it's sticking, and it's catching your clothes, and you're really afraid. I literally have never been more afraid in my life. And imagine what that must be like for people in war And I wasn't even being shot at. I wasn't having any of my friends be blown up around me. I wasn't having bombs come like right next to me. I mean, they were like farther away. They knew where they could put them that they wouldn't hurt us. You know, we were totally safe. It didn't feel safe, but we were totally safe compared to where they're actually aiming at you, where they're actually trying to drop a bomb into you. And now with all of our weaponry, that's that much more fierce. So you can't, I mean, the best way to describe that feeling was you felt like you were in hell. Like you were being attacked. And it was just terrible. So imagine going through that, not for the 1 hour that we did it, but to go through it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you know, where you're in this situation where you're trying to do us. Vietnam, if you ever watch any of the Vietnam, like the Ken Burns PBS documentary, that gives you a sense of how terrible it was. Where they're trying to take this hill and there's not really a real reason to. They're just trying to get the high ground, but then when they get there, it's like, okay, let's go back. Well, we just had thousands of people blown up for no reason. So this horrible sense of death, horrible sense of murder, and the sense of hell to it, the sense of fear, and all the words that go along with war. Sometimes with, especially like video games like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or those kind of things, it becomes like this cool thing that you're doing. Fortnite, I know, is kind of that way. You're in kind of a battle and you're doing a little dance after you kill somebody, you know. It's supposed to be this fun thing, but imagine if literally, I mean, maybe the Hunger Games movies, maybe they kind of get at a little bit of that sense of like fear. And that when you're being hunted, when someone's coming after you, that kind of gets at that terrible, horrible, just terrible, the worst thing ever experience. Now, in the Old Testament, that's what OT stands for, by the way, Old Testament, there was this idea that if you did something wrong, it was okay, if somebody did something wrong to you, it was okay to do it back to them. So if they hit you, you could hit them back. If they tripped you, you could trip them back. If they cut your arm off, you could cut their arm off. It was equal payment for equal crime. Okay? So this is where the idea of an eye for an eye, the other part is a tooth for a tooth. It was this idea, if someone cut out your eye, you had the right to cut out theirs, and you wouldn't be punished for it. Okay? So that was an Old Testament principle. It was kind of this fairness idea. You know, whenever someone says it should be fair, it should be fair, it should be fair. That's what this was about. But does it sound right?
Yeah.
It sounds right? You think that's a good idea? So what if it's a mistake though? What if you didn't mean to? So for example, you're driving your car, and not that you get to drive a car yet. You can't drive a car, don't do that. But if you have an accident, and someone gets really hurt, you'd feel terrible, you'd feel really bad. Would you think it was a good thing that they would be able to then just do it to you? Or your family?
Well, to me,
Right? But if you killed their family, it's okay for them to kill your family.
Well, they'd be dead.
Well, if one person lived. Or what about all their extended relatives? Their extended relatives could punish you as well. So the point is, this principle was there. Okay? Now, so here's an example that Jesus dealt with. So Jesus was on the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is this hillside of olive trees that you come down. It winds down this path that's really cool, but it faces, as you're coming down the hill, it faces the temple. So the temple is all in front of you. So it's almost like, it looks like a model as you're walking down this hillside. It's all right in front of you. And usually, because of the stone that's used, it almost looks like it's glowing. It's really cool. So, Jesus is up on the Mount of Olives, and you can see the temple right underneath him. It's early in the morning. He comes, he came to the temple again. And all the people came to him and sat down and he began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. Now, do you remember who the scribes and the Pharisees are? Anybody remember who the scribes and the Pharisees are?
They're the religious leaders of the church.
They're the religious leaders of the church, and in order to be a religious leader of the church, you had to be an expert in knowing all the commandments. And not just the 10 commandments, but all the commandments that are in the Old Testament. So remember how I told you that a lot of different groups added, and Moses added a whole bunch of commandments, because a lot of them were about living in community, being safe in community. So it went beyond the 10 commandments. Lots of little ones, like if you're going to take a pee, go pee outside the tent. You know, don't pee in the tent, right? That's not one of them, but that's an example of, you know, trying to have safety and health and things like that. Lots of menstruation commandments. Believe me, there's all sorts about what you're supposed to do. So all sorts of things like this. So they were the experts, and they're bringing this woman to test Jesus. Now, in the Old Testament, if a couple had been caught in adultery, the woman could be killed. Not the man, the woman. And so they catch this woman and they bring her to Jesus because they want to see what he'll do. They're not so much interested in the law. They want to test Jesus because they want to see how he's going to react to this. Is he going to be in line with the law? Is he going to follow the law? Or is he going to come up with something completely different? Okay? So if he doesn't follow the law, all the Jews around him are going to go, you didn't follow the law. That's wrong. You got to follow the law. The law is the most important thing. So they're testing him. So they bring her to Jesus. Essentially, if she's guilty right in front of them, they have a right, everybody in the crowd, to pick up the biggest stone they can and to throw it at her and kill her. It's called stoning to death. Okay, that was one of the common ways they would kill people. Right? So they bring her to Jesus. They make her stand before all of them, right in the middle of this group. And I bet they're all essentially holding stones in their hands, right there, ready to go. And they say to Jesus, Teacher, they're testing Jesus here. Realize this. This is a test of Jesus. Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in the law of Moses, it commands us to stone to death such a woman. Now, what do you say? So the law says you're supposed to do this. And we have the right, and we're ready to do this. What do you say? And they said this to test him so that they might have some charge to bring in. So if Jesus says, no, you shouldn't do it, they can say, see, you're not following the law. You know, now you're in trouble, Jesus. Because you're advocating for us to go against our faith, our principles, our law. You're telling us to break the law. Okay? So they're trying to trick him. Jesus, this is awesome. This is one of the best responses Jesus has. Jesus bends down and with his finger starts to write in the ground. Kind of writing something in the sand. It doesn't tell us what he's writing. Maybe he's just making a doodle. Maybe he's making a little picture. Maybe he's just making circles. We don't know. But it says with his finger, he's just staring at the ground. And he's just making some stuff in the sand. They're all kind of standing. You can imagine what this looks like. They're all kind of going, what's he doing? I can't tell what he's doing. What is he doing? And they're all kind of looking at each other like, is he going to answer? Are we going to get to say you're wrong? What's going on? So Jesus bends down and writes with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning him, he straightens up and he said to them, let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. So go ahead, throw a stone at her if you are free from sin too. If you're perfectly without sin, go ahead, stone her. And at once he goes back to writing on the ground. Bends down and writes some more on the ground. So he's staring at the ground. And if someone thinks that they are pure and without sin, then they can throw a stone and kill her. So now they're going, Once he bent down, wrote on the ground. When they heard this, they all go away, one by one, beginning with the elders. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing there. Isn't that awesome? they all realize they're just as guilty. They're all sinners too, just as all of us are. Right? We're all sinners as well. You know, when it really comes down to it, we're just as guilty as this woman, maybe of different sins. Right? But if we're sinners, then we should have the same punishment. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Right? Did anybody hear my sermon last Sunday? Anybody remember my sermon? What did I say about the confirmand? Do you remember? I'll give you a sucker if you remember what I said. Yeah.
He said that he had never done any of the 10 Commandments.
Right. But even more so, it wasn't even yeah.
He never done them all.
Exactly, like sweet or sour. Sweet or sour.
Sweet.
Grape or cherry?
What?
Grape or cherry?
Cherry.
Yep. So, I told this in my sermon last Sunday. I had a confirmand, this was about, oh man, this was like 17 years ago. I won't say his name. So, he came to me, he goes, I've never sinned. And I'm like, really? Yeah, nope, I've never sinned. And I'm like, you've never sinned? I'm like, do you understand what sinning is? No, I've never sinned. I've never broken any of the 10 Commandments. I've never broken any of them. So, oh, really? Okay. Well, would he be the person in this group to throw a stone?
Yes.
Now, hopefully he'd get it, and hopefully he'd go, oh, yeah, I did that one thing. And, oh, man, I feel really bad about that. Yeah, my parents were not proud of me that time, Oh, yeah, I remember that. So here are the leaders of the church, the leaders of the religious group. They know all the laws perfectly, and they are realizing, yep, I'm a sinner too. And they put down their stones. Okay? When they heard this, then they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. The elders started all. They go away. And Jesus is left alone with this woman standing there. He's still writing in the ground. I love this. He finally stands up, and he looks around, and he's like, where'd they all go? Right? And he says, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? And she said, no one, sir. And he said, well, then neither do I condemn you. Go away, go your way, and from now on, do not sin again. Right? The realizing that we all need to be forgiven. We all are sinners. We all need to start again. All right? It's a great story. So this also goes along with this covenant, commandment. I give you a new commandment, John 13. I give you a new commandment that you should love one another. Just as I have loved you, so you should love one another. So it says commandment. What is the commandment again, number 5? What is it?
Thou shalt not murder.
Maddie.
You shall not murder.
You shall not murder. Is it really about murder, or is it about this? What's the emphasis? Is it really about the weapons and the war and the hurting, or is it about doing this instead? Maddie.
It's about that because it's just saying instead of fighting people, you should just love one another.
Loving one another. You'll notice a lot of these commandments are written in the negative. You shall not, you shall not, you shall not, you shall not. Right? But the positive is this. The positive is you should love one another. Just as I have loved you, Jesus says, you should love one another. If you do that, you're keeping all the commandments. Because if you do that, you're going to help each other. You're not going to try to murder anyone. You're not going to do any of these other things. Right? And that becomes really important. Here's another parable. And how many of you know the Good Samaritan parable? Okay, here it is. See if my battery dies in here. The parable of the Good Samaritan. So Jesus, just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Do you remember what I told you a lawyer was? Do you remember that? Yeah. Someone who studied the law. And by the law, we're not talking about the law like we know the law. We're talking about the Bible law. All the things. So this lawyer is a student, is a teacher of religion. Okay? So they stand up to test Jesus. Teacher, he says, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says to them, well, what's written in the law? What do you need? What do you read there? And he answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Remember the up and down and the neighbor as yourself. We talked about this last time, right? This is a different passage, but the same thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those up and down. And Jesus said to him, you've given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, but who is my neighbor? And Jesus replies by telling him a story. He says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Now, I want you to understand that little phrase, what that little phrase means. A man was going down from Jerusalem, which is at the very highest part in the area, to Jericho, which is the very lowest part. And the road that gets you from there is all through desert and rocks. It's not pretty. When you finally get down there, you're down to the Dead Sea. So it's literally the lowest spot on the face of the earth. It's super dry. Nothing grows there. It's terrible. So you're going from two different areas, and the only people that are on this road are robbers. So when they hear someone's going from Jerusalem to Jericho, they're like, bad idea. Okay, it's kind of like somebody says to you, hey, why don't you walk in that dark alley where those guys are hiding there in the corners? You're like, no, that's not a good idea. So, but he starts to go into it. So he falls into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. So this guy, he is like half dead by the side of the road. Now, a couple people come by. By chance, a priest. What will the priest do? The priest will help him, right? Priest was going down that same road. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So he sees this guy laying there, bleeding to death. And he walks around him and goes around. No, he knows he's alive. Now, some people would say, well, obviously the priest didn't help him, because the job of the priest in that day and age, do you want to tell me?
Oh, no, I saw the Veggie Tales episode.
You did. That's a good one, isn't it? It's a good Veggie Tale. So, the job of the priest in that day and age was to remain ritually clean. And their job, if they stay ritually clean, then they can perform all their duties as a priest. But if they go and help somebody and touch a foreigner, they will no longer be ritually pure and clean. So they are putting their job ahead of this person's life. That's what they're doing. Okay? That's important. So, pass by on the other side. So also a Levite, one of the leaders of the church. That's what a Levite is, a leader of the church. He's from the tribe of Levi. And he's a leader of the church. They're often the ones that ran the church. When he came to the place and saw him, he also passed by on the other side. Probably for a very similar reason. Okay? But these two religious people are passing by and not helping. Right? They're not helping. That's the point. They should be helping. They should get it, right? The third person comes by is a Samaritan. Oh man, they're terrible. Samaritans. Ugh. It's kind of like saying, those Dodger fans. Ugh. Right? So, Jews hated Samaritans. They were rivals. They actually were both religious. They came out of the same traditions, but because of the areas, because of things that happened in history, they were separate. They didn't like each other. They hated each other. And so when Jesus says a Samaritan, they all went, a Samaritan? What? A Samaritan's traveling by and came near him. When he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went down, he bandaged him, bandaged his wounds. He even poured a little oil and wine, which helps to clean them. Then he put them on his own animal, brought him to an inn. Probably had to go way out of his way. There are no inns on that road. Right? Had to go way out of his way to find an inn to take care of him. The next day he took care of him all night long. The next day he pays the innkeeper 2 denarii and says, please take care of him. When you come back, I will repay you whatever you need, whatever you spent to take care of this man. I'll come back and I'm going to pay you So whatever costs you incurred to take care of this man, I'll pay it. Now Jesus says, which one of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And everybody says what? The Samaritan, right? Not the two religious people. The Samaritan, the one that everybody goes, ugh, Samaritan. One of those guys, right? Because they all have preconceived notions about them. But they're the ones that are doing the right thing, aren't they? They're the ones that are doing the right thing. And he says, so who was the neighbor to this man that fell on the rock? The Samaritan. And what does Jesus say? Go and do likewise. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love even your enemies as yourself. So I'll tell you a little story about a ski trip I was on. I had never ever skied before in my life. And a bunch of my friends in 7th grade said to me, hey, let's go on the school ski trip to Cascade Mountain. I lived in Madison. We were all going to Cascade. They all knew how to ski. I had never skied before, so I had to rent skis. And I wasn't really, I wasn't good even like on skates or anything like that. So I skateboarded, but I didn't do skis. So I said, okay, that'll be cool. Let's do it. I get on the chairlift, and my skis fall. Like one ski is falling off. They used to have the rope, the little string. So the strings, I'm like hanging off, trying to put this on. It's not going well, right? We get to the top of the ski lift. I hobble off. My friends leave. They take off, and I like immediately fell face down in the snow, right? And I'm like, what? Where'd they go? For the next probably, I don't know how long we were out there that night, 4 hours maybe? For like the next 2 to 3 hours, I made my way down the hill in a combination of falling, trying to put on skis. Once I got them on, I didn't know how to ski. So I'd ski for about 10 feet and then go, whoa, and then fall over. My skis would come off, I'd put it on. I was like soaked. It was just the worst night of my life. It was just horrible. I got about a third of the way down the first run on the far left on Cascade, the real long one, which is easy, but I didn't know how to ski. Finally, this guy comes up to me. Now this is Mark Pellegrino. Mark Pellegrino was my arch enemy. Okay? He was a kid that always made fun of me. He was a kid that went out of his way to trip me. Okay? In middle school, we went to elementary school together, we were not friends. Mark Pellegrino comes up to me, I'm like, perfect, exactly what I need right now. You know, why does he just cover me with snow? You know? But Mark Pellegrino stopped. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm trying to figure this out. He goes, let me show you. Gets me up on my skis, shows me how to snowplow. We get going. He gets me all the way to the bottom. He goes, there you go. He takes off. I'm like, wow. You know, I'll never forget that moment. It was a simple little thing. Really little thing, right? But huge. It was huge. I won't compare it to being killed or hurt like this guy, but I was in one of the most difficult times. It was just a simple skiing thing, but I was like having the worst moment of my life. It was terrible. And he was not somebody I expected to help me, but he did. He really did, and it was awesome. That's what we should be doing for each other. We should be going out of our way to care for people, right? Now, Luther's words here talk about each time, after every one of the commandments, he says this. What does this mean? That phrase should be like burned in our heads. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? That is the Lutheran question. Okay? That is literally the Lutheran question. So we as Lutherans often will find ourselves saying, what does this mean? We're in this situation. What does this mean? What do we do with it? What does this mean? Luther said this about the fifth commandment. Remember the fifth commandment? What is it? You shall not murder. You shall not kill. Any one of those that works. We should fear and love God. He often starts off with this. We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but instead we should help and support them in every physical need. So it's not just about hurting. It's actually about the opposite. It's about helping. How do we help them? So that kid in confirmation who said, I've never sinned because I've never broken any of the commandments, I said to him, okay, you haven't murdered anybody, good job, right? That's a start. Now, how have you helped your friends? How have you helped your enemies? How have you helped the people that hurt you, the Mark Pellegrinos? Have you done something to help them? That's what this is calling us to do. To go out of our way to help. And not just kill. Now, I talked about the onions, right? Any of you ever cook? Right? Any of you ever chop onions? You notice when you chop an onion down the middle, this is what it looks like. Maybe also like a tree when you've got the rings, right? Now, what I wanted to say about this is, every one of these commandments is like an onion. The outside layer is that's the simplest interpretation. So the outside layer is, you shall not kill. Good job, you did it. Right? That's the simplest layer. The next layer says, but did you think about killing them? You were so mad at them that you thought, I just wish they would disappear. Now you're not going to kill them, but you thought it. You know? Or you said something that hurt them so badly. Their words, with your words, maybe you didn't kill them, but you really wounded them. Well, kindness is a different thing. But that's kind of the next layer, is that you've hurt them with your words. Now you get into other layers, like, you can keep going in, and there's lots of layers to this. So much so that you realize, we've broken this commandment. I didn't kill anybody, but I haven't been nice to everybody. And maybe the inner core is, did you help them? Did you really do something that really helped them? That would be like the complete opposite, right? But at the same time, still the same onion. Does that make sense? Every one of these commandments is this way. All right, we'll talk about with the 8th commandment, same thing. Where you're talking about respecting your neighbor. Do not, no, drop it in here. But, how do we help our neighbor? That becomes a huge thing. So the onion. So it's not just about actual murder, it's also about helping our neighbor. That's the major lesson we want to learn tonight. You shall not commit murder. All right? So, we're going to be talking about this next week. Don't do anything, put your papers down. I want you to listen. Next week we have a big week. You guys listening? So, next week we are not having a class here. We are going to meet and we're going to have a service night. So, we're doing our food collection night where we go around the neighborhood and where we kind of like trick-or-treating. Kind of like trick-or-treating, where we will walk with your group. Your group will I'll give you essentially one street. So usually I kind of fan you out from here. So some go down Milwaukee Avenue, some go up Underwood, some go up Hillcrest, some go down Milwaukee the other way. We fan out. A couple of you, if you have smaller groups and have enough cars, we'll have you drive a little farther away. But you essentially get out of the car, you would start at your street, whatever your street is. You guys listening? You're going to walk and respectfully walk up to people's homes. You're not going to run up screaming. I had a group that did that one time. It happened to be a group of boys. I'm not sure why that is. But it was a bunch of boys that ran up screaming to a lady's house. I think she was about 95. She freaked out. She called the police. Okay, these boys are trying to invade my house, right? So she was really scared. So I don't blame her for calling the police. And then, of course, who do they call next?
The parents.
No, me. I got to talk to the police and explain why they were being so obnoxious. So we're not going to be obnoxious. We're going to be respectful. We're going to walk. But when you go up to someone's house, you're going to say, I'm here from St. Matthew's. I'll have a little sheet of paper for you. I'm here from St. Matthew's. We're collecting food for our canned food drive. Would you like to donate anything that would be good for the homeless. And they will sometimes say, "Get out of here, kids, quit bugging me, I'm watching the Brewers," right? Or they would say, "Oh, yes, I've been waiting for this. I've got a whole box for you. I'll be right back." And sometimes they come out with a huge box. You're like, okay. We're going to have our adults driving alongside next to you. And you can take that whole bunch of food, put it in their trunk, in their car. If adults have boxes, I'll try and get some boxes. Barb brought some boxes. We can put them in the boxes. It makes it a little easier to manage. We're going to do it for about an hour. You're going to want to dress appropriately, because even if it's raining, we're going out. Yes? You cannot wear your Halloween costume. It's not about Halloween. The week afterwards, we will not have class. You can wear your Halloween costume then, and you can go out trick-or-treating. All right? I intentionally didn't have class so you can go do that. But this is not about your enjoyment. This is about helping others. Okay? So, when you get back here, we're going to sort out the food. So I'm going to tell you this stuff again next week, but the main thing I really want you to know is you got to dress appropriately. I just got back from Houston. I went down there Monday, Tuesday. Gretchen and I went with the adult mission trip group down to check on our mission trip down there. I thought I looked at the weather before I left. I thought it said 80. When I got down there, it was 50. I was running around and all I brought were shorts and stretch sleeve shirts. That's all I had. I was freezing. That's how you will be next Wednesday if you don't dress appropriately. So, look at the weather. We're going outside. We'll be out for at least an hour, so you want to make sure you do that, okay? That's next week. Barb.
And put something bright colored on the top.
It's helpful if you have some sort of bright, reflective, not dark. Anybody ever drive up next to somebody that's running and they're wearing black? It's like you cannot see them. So white, or if you have reflective stuff or any of those things, that's going to be really helpful.
Does it start at the same time?
We're gonna meet here at 7. I'm gonna give you 10 minutes of instructions and then send you out. So yes, and then you'll be back a little after 8, where we'll sort the food and then I'll have a treat for you. Okay? Any other questions for next week? So we essentially have a service night next week, then no confirmation the week after that for Halloween. So you got a little time off. Make sense? Clean up your spots. I will call upon you for those that are.
Hey, Manny, put the things back. Oh, you forgot one.
We're going to do one cookie to start with. If there's more afterwards, you can come back when you put your folders away and get another one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go grab boxes.
Beautiful. Go ahead. Good.